Please direct your attention to the screen for a message from Michael Rojas, serving with AmeriCorps Disaster Response in Maui, Hawaii.
I joined AmeriCorps because I wanted to do something fulfilling with my life. AmeriCorps, to me, is just national service at its best, a group of individuals who care just as much as me, trying to find opportunities to show that love to communities that need it. The impact AmeriCorps creates is really insurmountable. I wanted to do something to where I was the individual supporting a community. So here in Maui, we have about 27 AmeriCorps disaster response team members. We've been doing donations management and volunteer management here. It has always just been, I think, the highest point of fulfillment for my life. And I continue to be just blown away by the spirit and the effort of our AmeriCorps disaster response team members. If I can continue doing this for a large portion of my life, I'll try to do that. So.
Please welcome to the stage Sarah Dudley, an AmeriCorps Vista member.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to start off by saying what an honor it is to share the stage with so many influential people who have brought success to AmeriCorps and public service throughout the past 30 years. My name is Sarah Dudley, and I was born and raised in Hope, Arkansas, less than 2 miles from President Clinton's boyhood home. I am an AmeriCorps member, currently serving as the Vista leader at Southern Arkansas University in Magnolia, Arkansas, home of the beloved Mule Rider mascot. I've been serving through AmeriCorps for the past 2.5 years. I have always been passionate about serving others, but my experience with AmeriCorps has changed my perspective on what it means to take action to serve those in need and put people first. I started service at the Boys and Girls Club in Magnolia, where I met kids from many different backgrounds. I had the chance to interact with all of the children enrolled in the after-school program. While there, I developed and implemented a program that allows local volunteers to connect with and mentor at-risk children. I really saw the need for this program through my experience with one child in particular. There was a kindergartner there who clung to me. She would skip fun activities just to sit with me and color. In May, we created a Mother's Day activity for the students, which included a card for them to write for their mom or any influential mother figure in their life. As I was passing out materials for the activity, my kindergarten friend caught my attention. She said, "Miss Sarah, I don't know what to write in my card." She told me her mom was in jail and she never got to see her. So I asked her who she wanted to make the card for. I told her she could give the card to anybody that she thought loved her and cared for her. She thought for a second, and then she looked up at me and she said, "Miss Sarah, can I make this card for you?" I was blown away. I spent 2.5 hours a day, 4 days a week with this child, and she felt that I loved and cared for her enough to deserve her Mother's Day card. I didn't realize how much of an impact I had on her purely from devoting my time and attention to her. Now, as I've transitioned to serving as the Vista leader at SAU, I realize that the Vista members in our program are similar to the young children at the Boys and Girls Club. They need support and guidance to thrive and make an impact. I am so glad that I get to provide the support that influences their service within our community. Through the Vista members' commitment to success, our program provides support to the college students at SAU and community members of Magnolia. Within the past 5 years of AmeriCorps being at SAU, we have had over 60 Vista members and nearly 250 summer associates commit to serving our community. Our members started the Mule Rider Market Food Pantry that has served over 1,500 students since opening. We also developed a community garden, which has produced over 700 pounds of fresh vegetables that goes directly to our market and our community. The Mule Rider Express transportation service was also implemented, which has given free rides to over 800 students for needs such as grocery shopping and doctor's appointments. The Career Closet, supported by our Vista's efforts, has provided professional attire for over 600 students. The Magnolia community has also benefited from SAU's AmeriCorps program with the revitalization of our state park and the implementation of volunteer programs. Currently, the Vista members on our team are working on creating a foster care initiative program, developing mental health resources, creating autism support networks, and enhancing the disability services on SAU's campus. In the community, Vista members are creating a tutoring program for the local housing authority, establishing a pantry at the Boys and Girls Club, and revising domestic violence shelter policies and procedures. These projects, while large endeavors, are only a small part of the service that AmeriCorps has made possible for my community. AmeriCorps has made a tremendous impact on me, on Southern Arkansas University, and on the Magnolia community. AmeriCorps has allowed us to fulfill the Clinton Foundation belief that everyone deserves a chance to succeed, everyone has a responsibility to act, and we all do better when we work together. We are able to fulfill this responsibility through the opportunity to serve as AmeriCorps members and get things done. Thank you so much to President Clinton for the service he completed in implementing AmeriCorps 30 years ago. My Vista team and I would not be able to serve as we do without your commitment to service. Your get things done attitude and application has changed the world for better, and for your work, we are truly grateful. It is my esteemed honor to introduce President Bill Clinton and the CEO of AmeriCorps, Michael D. Smith, to the stage.
How's everybody doing? I fired up? I thought you would be. What an incredible day this has been. Is that right? How about all of the extraordinary examples that we've seen of this extraordinary movement that President Clinton created in action, ending with this powerful testimony from Sarah. Let's hear it once more from Sarah. I am going to be very brief because I know we all want to hear from President Clinton. Mr. President, when you created AmeriCorps, you opened up the doors of opportunity for millions of Americans to care for our communities and to make a lasting, meaningful difference. And I think most importantly, to realize that we are all on the same beautiful team. And as the captain of our team, every team captain needs a Letterman's jacket. So, Mr. President, the first of its kind, thank you for all you have done to get things done for America and AmeriCorps.
Wow.
Oh, we're going this way.
Wow.
We got that classic logo there on the side for you, too.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Wow.
I'll bring it backstage for you.
That's pretty good swag. If you've spent any time in the New York winters, you know I will make very good use of that gift, and I'm very grateful. I also want to say how proud I was of Sarah Dudley and what she said in the service she's rendering here in my home state, and all the partners who made this weekend possible. Thank you, Ry Barcott and Honor Action, Alan Casey, my longtime friend who gave me my first glimpse into what AmeriCorps could become when I went to City Year in 1991 in December. And he said, "You may remember this morning," I said, "I still have the City Year sweatshirt they gave me in 1991. And the young man who gave it to me was from New Hampshire, who had been given the choice. He'd committed a crime of going to reform school or going into City Year. He said, "I think I'll try that City Year thing." He is now in charge of all their programming. He's still there. So I thank you. I thank Ann Mora Connolly, Voices for National Service, for all she's done. And Michael Smith, you're doing a really good job, and I'm proud of you. It's fun to be here. I want to thank Stephanie Street, who is in charge of all of our Clinton Foundation activities here, and we hope you've been made welcome, and Jay Barth, our librarian. And I think she's been mentioned already, but I have to recognize my longtime friend Phyllis Siegel, who came all the way from Massachusetts to be with us from Encore.org. Her husband Eli was the chief executive officer of my presidential campaign in 1992. And when it was over and I won, much to everybody's surprise, I asked him to oversee drafting the legislation which created AmeriCorps, getting it passed in Congress, and then establishing the program and setting it up. And he did, as always, great work. Later, I asked him, I said, I want you to prove that poor people are capable and wish to be independent and are dying to work. So he said, how are we going to do that? I said, we're not going to give speeches. You're going to find 20,000 companies in America and get them to promise to hire 1 million people from public assistance. So he said, I can do that. And he found more than 20,000 companies, and they hired 100,000 more people than they promised to hire. And then we had the dot-com bubble burst in early 2001, right after I left office. It lasted about 9 months. And then the Congressional Budget Office, a nonpartisan outfit, did a study and said that the people who moved from public assistance into a job were actually less likely to be laid off in the recession than people who were already in the mainstream economy. So I'm very grateful to Eli and to Phyllis and to all my other old friends, including another person you heard from, Mark Guerin, who had so many jobs when I was president, people thought he couldn't hold on to one. But he helped to make AmeriCorps a reality and later served as director of the Peace Corps. I also have to acknowledge Little Rock's longest serving city manager, Bruce Moore, who died just a few days ago, way too young. And he was a longtime champion of public service and particularly of national service in Central Arkansas. He helped us in more ways than I can say, so we'll miss you, Bruce. Thank you. I'm going to do something unconventional, but it'll be quick. You'll be painless. Whenever I get really disoriented and I try to figure out how to recalibrate, I try to think of something really big and work back to where I am in it, and you are, like astrophysics, or something really small, like the Human Genome Project and the fact that we now have apparently a couple of indicators that may finally lead us to be able to stop the progress of and maybe even cure Parkinson's disease. Or something really ancient, that may emphasize to us that life passes in the blink of an eye. And we have to pay attention to the days as they go by. So I'm going to do a little experiment here. Almost all kids are crazy about dinosaurs. Not many adults are. It probably is a case of arrested development, but I've always been fascinated by dinosaurs. And we just had the second dinosaur exhibit make its way through the library here. We're always doing various dinosaurs. We did it once before. And it all started when I read an amazing book called The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs, written by a man named Steve Brusatte, who is from Chicago and runs a program dealing with, excavation into dinosaur remains in Scotland at Edinburgh. And at one time before the continent split, when we were just Gaia, one big continent in the middle of the globe, Scotland basically was joined with what is now New Jersey. So there's a lot of dinosaur remains in New Jersey now because of that. Anyway, this guy Brusatte is something. And I was fascinated by the book. So I called him, I hyped the book on my account and Twitter. And he came here not very long ago, and it was a big hit. But he made me think about it in human terms. That is, before there were any people on our planet, the dinosaurs ruled the world for 100 million years. And 66 million years ago, this massive meteor struck the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico with a force and impact, and it was huge. It was several miles across, and basically the lights went out in America. And an enormous number of the species on our planet were destroyed. And the only, basically, descendants of the dinosaurs that exist today are certain birds that evolved from the raptors that could fly as far as they could get away from the destruction which then occurred. Otherwise, they were gone. Now, our pre-human ancestors have been around for, depending on how you define ancestors, 3 or 4 million years. Lucy's bones, now resident in Ethiopia, are about 3.2 million years old. There's a footprint in the Olduvai Gorge, which is just north of the Ngorongoro crater, and the Serengeti Plain is about 3.4 million years old. Given the way we're going, anybody think we're going to match the dinosaurs and rule the world for 66 million years? Given our behavior? Yeah, well, that's the point that I'm trying to make. 10 years ago, this year, I think, the great insect biologist, E.O. Wilson, who just died a couple years ago at the age of 90, whom I had the honor to get to know and try to support. It was interesting. He was a country boy from Alabama who became a widely renowned scientist at MIT. And he wrote a series of books on what he thought was going to be the end of his life, and then he kept living and he kept having all of his marbles, so he kept writing books. But at the time, he thought he was phasing his way out. And E.O. was probably 94 when he wrote, maybe he was 90 when he wrote The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs. Anyway, not The Rise and when he wrote a book called The Social Conquest of Earth. It's about 240 pages long. You can read it in not very long. But here's what he said. Think about AmeriCorps now. He said, if you look at all the species that have ever lived on our planet, which is about 4 billion years old, in a universe that's 14 billion years old. So all the species that have ever lived, the most successful after the dinosaurs, that is, if you define success as the ability to survive against repeated opportunities to be destroyed, the most successful species that have ever lived are ants, termites, bees, and people. And as far as we know, ants, termites, and bees don't have normal consciousness as we understand it, much less a conscience. But they do have highly evolved habits of cooperation. So if you look at ants, for example, there are species of ants subject to mass predators in Africa that will swarm like millions across an African savanna, and then when a predator chases them, and it's obvious the predator's about to catch up, then some of the ants will just go up on the tallest blade of grass and wait to be consumed so the others can all get away. In South America, there are termites who have evolved to be able to sense when a dangerous flood is coming. And they live underground. And they burrow holes into the ground, and they only go in and out with one. The others are for air conditioning. And when a flood is coming, they stay away so they don't drown. And there are all kinds of things that bees do. Honeybees are, as a lot of you know, under a lot of stress today and have been for about 20 years, mostly because they're extremely vulnerable to chemicals in the environment. But still, bees keep going. And we now have I've been alive long enough at least to read the scientific surveys that spiders, and there are over 2,500 kinds of spiders, which are normally extremely individualistic, spinning their own webs, catching their own prey. There are 24 species that, for reasons no one understands, in the last few decades, have started working together. And guess what? Their webs are twice as strong, their caloric intake's twice as great, they're getting bigger, stronger, having more offspring, they're growing. So Wilson says in this book, people have by far the greatest human potential on planet Earth because as far as we know, we're the only only species with both consciousness and a conscience. So the consciousness allows us enormous creativity, but makes us vulnerable to enormous arrogance, thinking we can forever dominate others. And so far in the long history of the world, at the last minute, our conscience has always kicked in and saved the day and enabled us right before we just jump off the cliff to do the right things and to preserve and strengthen our species. So, and the guy, keep in mind, the guy was about 90 when he wrote this. And he said, I think, therefore, the most important skill for the human race is cooperation. And conflict is very dangerous because you might win a lot, but you keep pushing yourself toward the edge. And life cannot be conducted without consciousness and conscience. It's a wonderful book. And when he passed away, I went and read it again. So what all that got to do with this? Do you really think we're going to make it 66 million years like the dinosaurs did? Or are we going to make it 1 billion years? I remember on the 30th anniversary of the first person walking on the moon, when Armstrong was up there, the living astronauts and the people at NASA came into the Oval Office in 1999, and we had this celebration, and among other things, they brought a tightly vacuum-packed moon rock that had been carbon dated at 3.4 billion years old. So they were about to leave and asked people, I said, would you loan that to me? And they said, look, I know it's very valuable, but as you can see, we're in the White House, the security's pretty good here. And my word's good, I'll give it back to you as soon as I leave. I need this rock. So they gave it to me. And you've seen many times on television the Oval Office and the president and the foreign dignitary are sitting together, and then there's that little table and the 2 couches on each side and people. So I put the rock in its clear container in the middle of that table. And whenever I had people there who were fighting like cats and dogs and they lost their temper, and they started screaming, I'd say, wait a minute, time out. Look at that rock. That rock is 3.4 billion years old. Now, we're all just passing through. What do you say we calm down and get something done? It didn't always work, but it worked more often. But it worked more often than you'd think. That is, I find it helpful to get off my high horse and just realize what a piece of life you have and what you don't. And you remember when the Webb telescope was in outer space, it started picking up all these great pictures from outer space, and they showed a black hole in the universe 55 million light years away, surrounded by 3 tiers of fire, continuous fire burning. And scientists that was explaining the photograph in the article I read said, you know, if our entire solar system, not Earth, not even the sun, if the whole solar system passed by close enough, it would be sucked in by the power of the magnets and immediately turned into a pile of dust that would fit in a large thimble. Now just look at that. It's hard to imagine this library fitting into a thimble. The whole solar system. So we were all talking about it one day, and I said, it makes you think it doesn't matter so much who's on Mount Rushmore, does it? We all need to keep this stuff in perspective. Life happens fast, and there's always going to be somebody that's richer than you are, always going to be somebody that's stronger than you are, always going to be somebody that's taller than you are, always going to be somebody that's smarter. But if you stuck us all together, one by one, all the people on this planet, but from the highest IQ to the lowest, you couldn't stick a straw between any 2 people. And yet we spend enormous amount of time thinking about our differences. when I spent $3 billion of your tax money to sequence the human genome, best money you ever spent, by the way, we have a return of way over 100 to 1. I mean, it's, enormously beneficial. It will be more so. The thing that struck me most as a citizen was that all of us in this room, if you look at every non-age related difference you can see in this room, gender, skin color, body type, you have straighter color or curly hair, anything, any change, any difference you can see here is rooted in 1/2 of 1% of your genomic makeup. 1/2 of 1%. And yet, most of us spend 99.5% of our time thinking about that 0.5%. And I'm not just talking about politics. It's obvious what I'm saying about politics, but I mean, how many times have you ever, if you're a man, have you ever walked down the street with a friend, seen your reflection in the mirror of a store glass window and say, if I had LeBron James's body, I'd have gone in a different line of work. Right? We all do these things. The genius of AmeriCorps is that it focuses not on domination, but on cooperation, not on what's different, but what we have in common. And the interesting thing we know from human behavior is that the more we focus on what we have in common, the greater contribution our differences make. For example, just think about it. And our differences are really important. So even though it's only 0.5%, since there are basically 3.4 million pairs of genomes in your body, 10% is a good number, 0.5% is a good number. But it works only if first you commit to we instead of me. That's when the differences count. When you're trying to answer the how question, how are we going to do this, that, or the other thing, then we know you could fill this whole room with all the studies that say that diverse groups make better decisions than homogeneous groups and better decisions than lone geniuses. So I'm telling you this because I think while we have justifiably celebrated this fabulous day and the great work you're doing, we still live in a pretty polarized time. And we have run up a debt that is too big. And interest rates are high, and people will say we have to bring it down, and they will target things that they don't value. So AmeriCorps is peanuts in the budget and has a value that far outstrips its cost. But somebody will come after it. You mark my words. Because for those who favor conflict over cooperation, who think that all that matters is our differences, this is a real problem because it works. And because you can't just target the government, it's really public-private cooperation at its best. It's citizen action at its best. And I've said all this to you today to prepare you for what I hope will be 30 years more, if it's necessary, fighting to preserve and then to increase the reach of AmeriCorps and of service generally. Because Dr. King was right when he said everybody can be great because everybody can serve. You don't have to be a genius to serve. You don't have to be big and strong to serve. You don't have to be rich to serve. And we've talked today about a large number of public servants, including those of you in this audience, who have made a real difference in other people's lives. I was very moved today when Colonel Lang gave me a copy of a letter she wrote to me 25 years ago, which she never mailed. Probably because she was so feisty in the letter. So upbeat about where she was going with her life and what she wanted to do. But she talked about how she was inspired to make more of her life by going into AmeriCorps and how it led her into college, led her into the Air Force, led her into all the things she later did. Every one of you has a story like that. And you want to give those stories to other people. But you also have to remember that in all societies, there are tribal behaviors that can be positive and negative. I mean, there is inclusive tribalism. I'll be who I am, and I'm proud of my clan or whatever, and you be who you are and be proud of yours and your roots. But in the end, we're on the same side here. And you know things I don't know, and I know things you don't know, and we'll figure out how to solve these problems together. We'll figure out how to seize these opportunities together. That is a great test we face today. And if you want other people like you to be in a place like this 30 years from now, you have to keep building on it, and you have to fight the inevitable efforts to undo it. You shouldn't be intimidated by the hills you have to climb or by the necessity of fighting for what most of us believe is our vision of America, because first, in general, there are no permanent victories or defeats in public affairs. And secondly, we've always had these identity fights. When the Union forces withdrew from the South after the Reconstruction period, there was this violent reaction immediately. And they tried to bring back the Ku Klux Klan, which Ulysses Grant had destroyed as president. Then in the 1900s, we had a violent anti-immigration period, violent prejudice against Chinese immigrants. Then we had the Red Scare in the 20s. Then in the 1930s, we had this enormous period of anti-Semitism and basically anti-democracy group who believed that only authoritarian governments promoting ideological and racial purity were worth having. Then we all got together and won World War II, and then we started acting like idiots again after a while. But we did stand together in the Cold War to preserve liberty, even though we occasionally abused it by just calling everybody we disagreed with a communist. Then we had the huge fights of the Civil Rights era. Then we had the huge fights over women's rights. Then we had this massive fight over the role of government. I mean, we've been doing this a long time. And most people don't get scared until it looks like all that stuff might succeed. Otherwise, most of us are happy to let somebody else fight the fight, and we think somehow it'll work itself out and everything's going to be fine. But the ultimate lesson of national service and of AmeriCorps and a lot of the other specific programs of which many of you are part is that we have a personal responsibility to join in the effort. And there's never going to be a total guarantee you'll prevail. But the chances are dramatically better if you try than they are if you cave. So I want to leave you with that. You should be so proud of having been part of this movement. And we do have a lot of support which crosses party lines. But there will be people who believe, honestly, that a conflict-ridden, divided society, which puts their side in total control from whatever direction, would be better than the messy model of community service, which hugs us all and sits patiently while we say what we think and figures out how to move forward together. A lot of people don't like that. So I just want you to remember that this is the way it's always been. Machiavelli said a long time ago that there is nothing so difficult in human affairs as to change the established order of things. For those who would gain, all the people you're trying to help wherever you go, are uncertain of their benefit, while those who might lose are absolutely sure about the cost of not having absolute power. You're in the middle of a seminal period in human history. Artificial intelligence is going to do more good than harm. It's going to create or cost more jobs. We're going to really take advantage of the self-evident opportunities presented by climate change to create a more interesting, more well-balanced, more widely shared prosperity? Or will we fiddle around with it in denial until we're living through a real-life version of one of those old Road Warrior movies? It's just up in the air. Welcome to real life. Nobody gets a pass. Nobody gets a pass. So what I want to say is, I hope all of you will say to yourselves, gosh, I hope I'm lucky enough to be here 30 years from now. And if I am, I hope we're still pushing community service and empowerment and changing and making things better. And if I'm not, I'm going to give it all I got for as long as I've got. That's it. There's not much else to say. One final thing. In 1968, when I was very young, I was once, I supported Robert Kennedy when he was running for president. And he thrilled all of us by constantly quoting poetry. When Martin Luther King was murdered, he quoted Aeschylus in a speech in Indianapolis. And he loved to quote from Alfred Lord Tennyson's Ulysses. And he encouraged all these young people, said, for the line, "Come, my friends, 'tis not too late to seek a newer world." Oh, it was thrilling. I had to live a few years before I realized that that is actually a poem for old people. because Ulysses had given the kingdom over to his son. And then he said, well, heck, I can't just lay around here. So he called all of his old surviving colleagues together and said, let's set sail again and sail on beyond the western stars until we die. Some noble work of note may yet be done. So don't ever forget that. Whatever happens to you, whatever problems you have that require your attention, whatever success you have that fills your days, always make time for that newer world, for that noble work of note. If you do, chances are we'll be just fine. Thank you.
This concludes the AmeriCorps Summit program. Please gather your things and exit the Great Hall through the door on the left. We invite you to tour the museum and take a presidential portrait in the Oval Office. Shop at the Clinton Museum store in the lobby and receive a 10% discount with your credential. And join us for happy hour at 42 Bar and Table on the lower level. Thank you for attending AmeriCorps, 30 years forward. This concludes the AmeriCorps Summit program. Please gather your things and exit the Great Hall through the door on the left.